Hello, folks. Welcome back to the CTMP 60 podcast. I'm your host, Sam Fellows. Check it out. I am wearing the brand new Mosport Retro Tee, part of our CTMP 60th anniversary collection. I'm going to provide a link for this shirt below. We know these are going to be a big seller, so be sure to get yours quickly. Listen, I'm so excited for this podcast today. When I was younger and my dad would tell me stories about racing at CTMP in the 80s and GM Challenge and Porsche Cup, there was this recurring character, and he was always seemed to be involved in the on-track battles and in the championship rivalries. That was, of course, the one and only Richard Spénard. Richard is a household name for Canadian racing fans, and if you were at then Mosport in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, you would have seen him winning races and championships across many different classes and disciplines of racing, whether open or closed wheel. Richard won races as well in Trans Am and in IMSA. He competed at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and in 2001 he was inducted into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. Listen, before we get to it, I just want to say my first ever race at Mont-Tremblant, I got the opportunity to get on track the week before with FEL at one of their driving experiences, and it was Richard who was the lead instructor. And at the end of that day, he carved out some special time for me to work with me one-on-one. He was so generous and helpful, and it was so special for me because I'd heard all these stories from my dad about, what my dad had learned racing with him and how Richard had mentored him and taught him. And then here I was, at Tremblant, and Richard was now teaching me. That was something, so special and so cool. And we managed to have dinner that night with Richard in Tremblant. And I just sat back and listened to him and my dad talk about the old racing days, and I knew there had to be a way to bottle this up. And so when we discussed doing this podcast, one of the first names that came to mind was Richard. We had to get Richard on the podcast to talk about his experiences, to riff with Ron about their rivalry and racing days in the 80s, and just all around a great ambassador for Canadian racing in general. So here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Richard Spénard. So thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us. But I'd like to start with maybe just talk about yourself and how you first got involved in motor racing, and interested how and when that happened.
You're lucky I still remember.
Yeah.
I know a little bit of your bio. You want me to help you here?
It started with a one-day course at Mont-Tremblant. Lucky enough, being in Montreal, Mont-Tremblant was only 130 kilometers away. Great racetrack, and there was a great race school. Back then, there was probably only one. It was the Jim Russell Racing School, and that's how I started. Back then, racing school they were very well organized. So you could do your 3-day school, some lapping, and then there was a school championship. And it was so popular, we were like 80 per weekend. Wow. Racing Formula Ford owned by the school, Yeah. So it was a good way to start. And also there was a fairly big prize by winning the championship. And I won the first year I raced, and I won a Formula Ford, a rolling chassis back then.
Oh, wow.
A Van Diemen 1974, I would say. And as you know, Ron, in racing, you meet some good contact, and you meet some people who have better contacts. And I met a guy who said, if you win the championship, I think I can help you with sponsorship. And make a long story short, that guy became my brother-in-law. He married my sister, and he did find me peanut planters, if you remember.
There's the peanut cart.
Peanuts. And that really how it launched my career. And it brings me to Mosport because, my racetrack was Mont-Tremblant, and once or twice we raced at the Glen with the school. The school would move to the Glen. So I knew the Glen, I knew Tremblant. And once I got my own Formula Ford, it was time for me to go and compete wherever, And we heard about the Boulevard Series in Mosport. But, being a young French Canadian, you hear about racing in Mosport. It's super fast. It's very competitive. There crashes everywhere. And basically there was one or two guys that I knew went there and they never went back. I said, well, I have to go and try it. So I went there with my dad, and it was crazy. I mean, go there with my dad pulling the Formula Ford on a flatbed trailer, no suspension, Mosport 6 hours most of the time during the night. Get there, and my toolbox was like a fishing toolbox. That's it. I mean, we didn't know nothing. And basically, we didn't need to know much because we relied on the community. Back then it was easy. It was fun. You go there, and obviously it was super competitive, but people would help you out. And I just loved the first time I raced in Mosport. We were running up front immediately, not winning, but top 5, top 3 in the Formula Ford Boulevard series without racing in any other series but the school series. So it was fun, but I had some eye opener at Mosport. I remember the first time it was raining. I was in my Formula Ford, and going through number 2, John Scratch. Remember John Scratch?
Oh, yeah.
He went by me like I was standing still. Then it dawned on me there's a wet racing line,
Yeah.
So Mosport was very much my teaching tool to become a better driver, So it was, I had great souvenir. Honestly, Mosport actually ended up being the racetrack that I've raced the most.
Yeah. And had incredible amount of success there too.
Yes, it was my type of racetrack. It was fast, not too many corners, couldn't get lost. And I ended up doing some 24-hour races there with John Powell, Corvette, Porsche with Ludwig Emrat. So varieties of racing that truly I just had great souvenir. Couple crashes, but not many for the amount of races that I've done there. And that brings me to actually even more than that. If you remember, Ron, that's before you were rich and famous. We moved the school, Spénard David, to Mosport a year. Well, not a year, but a period of summer.
Yeah, 1987.
87 or 86?
It was 87. Yeah.
87?
Yeah.
And I remember we had not only to move the cars, we also had to move mobile homes.
Yeah, people. Yeah, staff.
We had like 12 mechanics. We couldn't find any lodging. So we had 3 mobile homes that we moved to Mosport. I'm not even sure if it was legal, but Miles would remember that. Miles still involved, I guess. Yeah. So Miles would remember that. I'm sure it was great help to do that. My dad was involved at that point, moving the mobile home. So if you look back like this, we worked hard to try to make a living. Racing at that level, whether it was the school, racing Camaros, and I can go on and on.
What was the year that you were at CTMP Mosport for the first time? Do you remember?
I think it was 1975 in Formula Ford.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when I entered the Boulevard Series, and also that's the year there was still a Grand Prix. F1 Grand Prix in Mosport, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. There were so many entries, we had to do a qualifying race a week or so before the race weekend.
Wow.
Of the Grand Prix.
Yeah, I remember that as a kid watching unbelievable numbers. And that was one of the reasons that Harvey started that Boulevard Series, was to basically create his own support races for the big weekends.
Yeah.
Because back then, if you had a Can-Am or a Trans Am, IMSA, Formula One, that's what that's the feature event came, but there was no support races. So you created your own, and that's created a very, very successful platform there with both.
Yeah. No, it was
for
super.
Formula Ford and for the B and C sedans. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when the track was for real men racing. Safety was not the best part of the venue, but there was no room for mistake.
No. And it was only, back then, it was only 28 feet wide.
Yeah. And going through corner one when Formula Ford five, you know, 5 abreast. Make the calculation. Sometimes there was a 4 row that it wouldn't make it through.
Yeah.
No, there's just, you know, there's no other track in my career that I have so much good memories of than Mosport. You know, I still call it Mosport. Sorry. Canadian
Tire Motorsport Park.
Motorsport Park. Okay. I need to get used to it, but you know, when you go to Mosport for 25 years, it's hard to change name.
Yeah, I get it.
And did you feel like when you went to other tracks, maybe places that people considered daunting or difficult, that what you had learned at Tremblant and at Mosport had helped you in your technique or in your?
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
You know, if you're successful in Mosport and Tremblant, I think you can go anywhere. Yep. And be very successful, because you know, Mosport is one of the fastest track that I've raced in terms of average speed, you know, 4th gear, 5th gear corner. And Tremblant is like 10 miles an hour slower, a bit more technical. So if you put both together, we were well equipped to go anywhere today and do well, you know.
Yeah, and then you add in the, you know, back in the Players GM days, Rockman Sports, you add the street circuits, and we had an incredible opportunity to learn and develop. You had all the high speed stuff plus the street circuits, and and they were the most difficult for me to learn. I remember struggling a little bit at Toronto Indy the first time, and and you gave me the best advice I've ever had for a street circuit was, Ronnie, when you turn in, you got to aim for the wall, as opposed to what I was doing was sort of driving around it, right? As opposed to turning in about 2 car lengths sooner to the apex, and essentially aiming to hit the wall at the center, at the apex. Mm-hmm. And that was.
Yeah, I think in our racing, I give you a few pointers.
Yes, you did.
But we also
so I digress. But hang on. Okay, so let's go back and Go ahead.
Let's say we had a lot of fun racing together.
We did.
Regardless.
Yes. So you were in Formula Ford 75, and when did you? Was it just 1 year in Atlantic in 77, or was it 2 years?
Actually, I did the 76 race in Mosport, and then I did most of the series in 77 with Gilles. But in 75, I did 3 races, and Mosport was one of them, and I crashed in corner 8.
Ooh.
Oops. Yeah. It's funny, these things, you remember like it was yesterday. I can tell you why I crashed and everything. But anyway, I didn't finish the race. And after that, you're right. I went to California to teach. Met some people.
How did that happen? How did you end up at Jim Russell in California?
Well, because Jacques Couture was the owner. And Jacques Couture was my mentor at Tremblant.
Okay.
So he was waiting for me, basically. He was always asking me, why don't you come? Why don't you come? And I wanted to be a race car driver back then. I didn't want to hear about working too much. And, you know, then you face the obvious that you need to make a living because you can't make a living. So went to Riverside International Motorsport Park and Laguna Seca. We had two schools. So I ended up being chief instructor there for a couple of years. And in the summertime, I would come to Tremblant to do the season in Tremblant. And really, honestly, it was great learning experience. In California, met some rich guys, you know, got involved in racing IMSA series with a BMW M1, and then met with Phil Conti, got into a Can-Am car, crashing corner 3 in Mosport.
Yes, I remember that.
So that's the good thing. That's about all the crashes I had in my career. Corner 8 in Mosport, corner 3 in Mosport, and once in Westwood. But otherwise, you know, I was not a guy who crashed, a little bit like you, Ron. So really, I was out of racing except for teaching and opening my school in 86, 85. 85, and then I was super busy. I mean, try to start a racing school. It sounds fun, but it's like any other business, and worse because you have to hire people that you can't pay. So you have to deal with, you know, kids that basically have no money, and you try to make them work for free, and we had to use 12 of them. And then Ron Fellows comes to me. He says, "Hey, Ricky, there's a new series. You need to be part of it. Let's go." I said, "Ron, I am so freaking busy. I can't even think about it." And of course, Ron Fellows, Ricky, you need to do it. So I said, "Ron, go get the freaking cars, and I'll meet you at the dealership or something like this. But I don't have the time." And really, it's another great story with you, Ron, because we ended up going to Applewood, and we finished the meeting with 2 free cars. Is it true?
I don't remember that part, but I'm
of course, I paid everything else for you. You don't remember.
Yeah. Oh, I recall. Yes, I recall. I remember in '86 because I was working at the school because I'd worked in construction.
Yes.
For over 9 years, and that was to leave that and go work at the school was. I mean, it was a. I mean, I think about it now. You had, you know, the amount of money I was making as a machine operator, and then going to work at a racing school, and it didn't pay very well, but it was the connections, and that when the Players GM series started in '86. You paid for my entry fees. You hauled the car. I was part of the team with you and Ray, and taking your used tires.
I don't remember all the details, but I remember leaving Applewood, and I said, "I can't believe that we just got 2 free cars to go racing." You know, and that was the start of it. You know?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a new era, because really,
yes, it was.
My school took all of my time. I basically quit racing, and a new era started in '86 when I ended up not only having the school, I ended up racing 3 different series on the same weekend.
Yes.
Mosport, Tremblant, and so forth.
Yep.
So from '86 to '93, I would say, we were very, very spoiled in Canada to race some professionals, I would say. I wouldn't call them professional, but professional handled series, because we had cigarette company behind us. You know.
Well, you had you know, with the along with the points money. I mean, I talk about it all the time. We had an $18,000 Camaro that paid $6,000 to win. Yeah. What a good deal. And then and 2 liter, and then Porsche Turbo Cup Series, they were paying 10 grand to win. So, but I think the biggest thing, with those, where I was going with talking about you is, you'd done some Can-Am and Trans Am. You come back, you start this racing school. These 3 series start up with a bunch of money, so there's opportunities for if you're successful, you will not only get some prize money, but you'll also be able to get sponsorship. And you had Pulsar. We ended up with Motomaster, Canadian Tire, and the connections with the Porsche dealers. But anyway, the thing that people need to appreciate is the fact that in 2-liter, Players Gym, Rothman's Porsche, your level of talent was the benchmark for everybody to learn from.
Yeah.
I mean, you as I said before, one of the most naturally gifted drivers I've ever raced against, and I've raced against a lot. So
it probably hurt me a bit because I didn't have to work hard at it, And I know exactly when you basically were able to walk away from me in your career, not necessarily, I'm not saying in lap time, but I've learned a lot from you too. I remember going to the Motorsport, and your first few times you followed me, and we were teammates, and I said, Ron, you need to do this and that and this. And I remember you said, shit, you're right. And from that point on, you were much better. You were quicker. Right. And then the ball turned around where I learned from you because, one, I was very busy. I didn't have time to test. I didn't have, for me, just give me a steering wheel. I'll turn left and right and I'll make it happen. You were more of a developer, perhaps because you had more time. You were more dedicated, and I was lacking that aspect of racing that today I kind of regret, because I probably could have gone further. 100%. But and I do appreciate what I saw in you, and I'm happy to hear that I was there as a benchmark.
100%. Yeah. No. You think about all the young drivers in all 3 of those series, and you weren't an old guy by any means, but you had more experience, and you were incredibly talented. So for us as the young wannabes to have that benchmark was incredible. And I think about some of the racecraft. Your racecraft was something that impressed me, and some of the things I've been able to use since. But I worked at it because I felt like I needed more seat time to get better, and that was always a marvel for me, was that you would just show up on the race weekend and run all 3 classes and win. I mean, you won from 86 to 92, you won the GM series, I think three times. There was a few of us that only won it once. And then there was a Porsche series, multiple championships, F2000, and I think there was I was looking at it earlier in 86, in all 3 series, your batting average was like 500. You were winning like out of all 3 series, you're basically winning half of the races. Yeah. Everything you started.
And making money doing it.
And making money doing it, yes. And it at the time, the school quickly became the school to be connected with, whether it was.
Well, yeah. My timing was off when I was in Formula Atlantic, because I was in the shadow of Gilles, as his teammate, and Gilles moved up to F1. The series basically collapsed because there was no more funding. My timing was not really good back then. But then in '86, with all the new series coming up and my school being there, I was able to draw sponsorship through the school into my racing team, and that's how Canadian Tire came aboard. So then my timing was really, really good, you know. Talking about age, you see, we're talking about '76. I was born in '54, so and that's '76, '86. I was 22 years old.
Yeah, you were a young man.
So you're 2-3 years older than me, so you were. No, but
I was when I went to your school in '85, I was 26, something like that. So I was a bit older for the wannabe open wheel guy.
Yeah, so. we were all old compared to the new kids on the block. I mean, starting racing at 20 years old, it was young then, but today it's like way old, you know?
Oh yeah.
So things have changed a lot.
Yes,
but in return, are we going to see series in Motorsport as we had in '86 to '92? It's hard to, you know.
I think there's, you know, and that's there needs to be, you know, and this is a whole nother conversation, but there definitely needs to be a focus on some level, whether it's in my opinion, it needs to be the sanctioning body. The sanctioning body needs to be cultivating corporate support so we can get back to that, because it's not like there's any less money around. Yeah, no. Tobacco was gifted into the sport, and the sanctioning body reaped the benefits from it. They didn't actually have to do any work. And then when tobacco was legislated out of the sport, they didn't do anything. It's been, I mean, how many years since 30 years, and it's terrible. So I think there's plenty of opportunity. We need to get more of a focused effort, and that's kind of what we're doing. So you want to help, we'd love to have your help. And by the way, it doesn't pay any money.
I read through help.
Yeah. I lost you at volunteer, right?
It's nice to be living on an island.
Yes. Well, we've got property on Vancouver Island, but we just haven't done anything with it.
I've been there,
yeah.
I've been there 30 years ago.
So I think I mean, what, you know, in your, you know, racing in all three series back then, there was all kinds of young talent. Who you know, who struck you as really good back then, particularly you know, given the fact that you were running in all three series?
Well, I mean, we have, you know, we have Scott Goodyear, we have Paul Tracy, we have we have Kenny Wilden, we have, you know, Stefan Prou back then. I mean, we have in no time. I think we can count probably 10 guys that you know, made a good life in racing. Not necessarily racing as a driver, but a lot of them became good coaches. Some of them raced for the players' racing team, David. You know, it's quite amazing the era we had. We still see some Canadians in the States these days. So the really good guys, they end up having rides. Rides that perhaps were not existing then. You know, I see Faf now involved like crazy in 2 or 3 different series. It opens up opportunities for the best guys, but they're very sparse. You know, there's not that many. You know.
And again, you know, I think some of the the issues of the value proposition that we had back then with these three series, and all three being, again, you didn't have a US based series bringing a number of support races as well. Whereas, back then there was the big show, and then there were these incredible support series, and getting the opportunity to race in front of a big crowd of people, whether it was Canadian Motorsport Park, Montreal Grand Prix, Trois-Rivières, downtown Toronto. It was pretty incredible.
And if I remember, all of these series, the first weekend ever of all the three series that you just talked about, the first weekend was at Mosport.
Yeah.
On
Victoria,
on Victoria weekend.
Yeah. I may have told this story before, but I came across it a few years ago in my basement, and it was qualifying sheet from the first Players GM race at then Mosport, and
82 cars.
I thought it was 76. There were 76 listed. Yeah, there were 76 listed on the sheet. And I remember I was P5 and I was mad. And you're going, Ronnie, look.
Yeah.
Look, you could be 76, like, get your head out of your backside. You're P5.
I remember you being mad. I remember that.
Yeah. Probably more so because you were P1.
I had more experience. I was older. Yeah. But it's funny, experience. We can go back to, yes, I learned the track at Mosport with Formula Ford, but how many races that I did with the Honda series? 52 horsepower.
Yeah.
Try to roll the speed in every single corners of Mosport, flat out the number 2. And all of this helped me a lot jumping into a sedan as a Camaro.
Right.
Because I had experience in small, no power sedan. And I have to say, I've learned a lot in Honda.
Yeah. That's good to know. What about the front wheel drive versus rear wheel drive?
To me, the line is the same. You just need to deal with the traction in the front, which sometimes if you don't have a real race car front wheel drive, you don't have a positive traction. With a Honda, it was not a situation because you had no power. So you had to roll the speed up and put your foot in the floor right away. But in return, when I raised the Nissan Cup, how do you call it? The Nissan Cup or the
the Micro Cup.
Micro
Cup.
Yeah.
You had more power, and wheel spin was an issue coming out of the hairpin. Slicks, but you had wheel spin, so you'd lose a lot of time trying to get traction. But turning into the corner, flowing the speed in, there's no difference. I think a good driver will adapt fairly quickly to anything. I think it's more difficult to go from a sedan to a Formula cars than the opposite. Because a sedan, you need to slow yourself down, not to overdrive it. But any good driver in a sedan to jump in an open wheel car, and suddenly you have to get more out of himself as a driver to get the maximum performance of an open wheel. It's a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
When did you get into Trans Am?
Go ahead.
You did some Trans Am racing too, right?
Well, that's a good question. It was I believe my first race was 82 in Trois-Rivières. I was just doing a few IMSA races in the States with M1, and I liked the feeling of a sedan. It was like first time I was driving something with doors, and then Trois-Rivières always been such a big show in Quebec. I said, well, shit, maybe I can get some sponsorship together and 2,000-3,000 here, 2,000-3,000 there, and basically, build up a sponsorship package to rent a car from Gordy Oftedal. Oftedal?
Yep, that's who I did my first Trans Am race with as well.
Yeah, and that's how it started. But I did well, but the car broke down. But I was leading the race the first time, and then the following year I was able to lend something replacing David Hobbs in the Corvette, the Atlee Corvette.
Yeah, that was a good team.
And I did well there too, but not well enough to land a full-time job with a paycheck. And this is where I decided that I needed to have a business in racing to make a living. And this is where I remember very well. And again, it has a little to do with Motorsport, because in Trois-Rivières, I finished, I was running third. We had an issue with tires and we finished fourth, but always in front of the regular teammate that the Atlee had with the Corvettes. I won Road America out of the 3 races that I did, it's a big deal. So I figured, being perhaps naive, that they would hire me for the following weekend in Motorsport, Here I am, Canadian, I know Motorsport, I do well, they're going to hire me because I've done better than their teammates or their regular drivers, And I remember waiting for the Sunday night to have a meeting, and basically the meeting was, yeah, sure, yeah, you could race Motorsport, but you need to bring $20,000. I said, what? Excuse me? You're gonna pay me $20,000? No, you need to bring me $20,000. This is exactly then. In my mind, I said, okay, the offer that I had from Ray David a few weeks ago that I turned down is something that I need to get back to. And I called David Raymond, and by the way, just passed away a year ago.
Yes.
So I called Raymond. I said, the offer you gave me to get into partnership with you and buy Jim Russell School, so let's do it. I was kind of mad at racing because I realized that my talent was just not going to make it. And I was at the age where I needed to be more serious about making a living. So I called Raymond and I said, let's go. And we started to work together and basically tried to purchase Jim Russell. And it was almost a done deal. Then at the end, it collapsed. They decided not to sell. And Raymond, aggressive as he was, he said, okay, we're gonna kill them. We're gonna go to Shannonville and open a freaking bigger school than that. So we ended up in Shannonville. And it did. I mean, we were successful right from the beginning, perhaps a little bit to do with my reputation and my success in racing. I was able to draw people from everywhere. And the school, and I was taking it seriously, and with helps with Huron and instructors were very dedicated. We had a good product. It was unique then,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't race Motorsport. I never raced Motorsport in a Trans Am car.
Oh wow. Okay, I would not have. Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have put money on you.
Instead, I went to watch you. A few years later.
Yes.
And then you went to Le Mans with there's a Porsche. Was that a Porsche Canada thing that they got put together?
Well, it was a prize for the first top 3 in the championship in '86. Oh, okay. Whoever was finishing in top 3 in the Porsche Cup, Rotman Porsche Cup series. Yeah. we're getting a Le Mans ride in a Porsche 962.
That's a hell of a prize.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that today?
Yeah.
What was
really.
the 962 like? What was the 962 like to drive?
Well, it's all, it looks like very glamorous to go to Le Mans and everything, but it was probably the way that you don't want to go to any racetrack. You never drove the car before. You never went around Le Mans once. So we were not prepared. It was a great gift, but we didn't have the funding to go there like a month before for open practice. Me and Scott Goodyear, we went to Pocono trying to at least sit in a 962, and it was rained out. The car never made it to the track, so we never even saw the 962 before Le Mans. So by the time we ended up racing, neither of us had more than 6 or 7 laps around the track.
Wow.
So there you are facing a 24-hour race with one of the fastest cars you ever raced before. And back then was before they had the chicane. So we were hitting, we were hitting close to 240 miles an hour down the straight line. And
oh my God.
But it's not the type and Ron I'm sure is the same and probably better than me at that. We like to go and enter a race weekend knowing we can do super well and we're ready.
Right. Yeah.
It was not the case. We weren't ready. It was a great experience for the show, being there, go around Le Mans, but it's not the type of event that I would do again the same way,
When I went to Le Mans the first time, when I was with GM, Herb Fischel, who was head of GM Racing back then, this is the late 90s. He, when I signed with GM or re-signed in 97, and we started, the goal was to take a Corvette to Le Mans. He said, Ron, you have to come to Le Mans before we race it. And I'm like, why? He says, you have to come and see this event because it's so different than any other. And he couldn't have been more right. It was daunting, almost 9 miles around, understanding that the time change. And on top of that, the practice and qualifying on Wednesday and Thursday started at 7:00 at night because they had to keep the public parts of the track open for the road track. So practice was 7 to 9 and then 10 to midnight. And that was your practice on Wednesday and Thursday. I mean, it was a time of year where you had summer solstice, so we never got dark till 10:30 anyway. But it was like, whoa, this is, and going and then getting I got a couple laps in a pace car, which was useful, but it was just understanding the difference in how that race weekend operated was eye-opening, and I can't imagine.
It was great. Yeah, I tell you what, it's the first time and the only time in my life that I'm going a straight line and my knee is shaking because I'm like full throttle for the last 2 minutes. This car is going like Mach 1. And I don't really know the track, It was unbelievable. Yeah. Then you get used to it, But we were running top 10. I think we were 7th when the engine broke down. But I'd rather race something slow but being competitive than racing a fast car and not being competitive because of different issues.
Right. Yeah, but and again, in today's terms, to understand racing and the Porsche you raced in '86 was not the Turbo Cup car. You were still on in '86. That was before you were on street tires still. Going from a modified production 944 into a prototype capable of winning overall. I mean, just
Yeah, I
don't
can't
know, as a
imagine.
prize, it's incredible.
Funny enough, I'm in contact once in a while.
And you live to tell the tale.
Yeah. Mind you, before that, I had race or practice with a Can-Am car. I had a race with a prototype.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the name, but I had experience with some fast car. But
Yeah.
you never raced a 962, and they were not that easy to drive. Visibility was awkward, and the track is, it was like a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I had better events and better souvenir at Motorsport.
Thank you. Which is why we're here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So is there any special memories watching, competing at CTMP? Any that stand out?
Yeah. Remember the day where we were practicing qualifying in the Camaro series, and I'm tailgates you and trying to get by you, and finally I get by you, and just like nothing was happening, like I was cruising, I took my hand off the window and just like tapping with my door, just like I'm listening to music, it's like nothing happened. Remember that?
Oh yeah. Yes. Those were the days. Yes.
Yeah, these are fun
Yes.
memories.
I also remember at Tremblant at the shootout in 91, I think 90 or 91. I don't know how we ended up we ended up out of the top 6, but we were on, I think it was the 4th row, side by side. And as we're coming around Namaro heading to the green, I can see you looking I was on your left, and you were working your mirror to try to knock my mirror off, which you did. Which actually reminds me of the story when I think this is in the early 80s when I was racing Formula Ford. I remember going out to watch, that was when you were in the Honda series, the last corner at Saint Air was onto the drag strip, and you're out front, and every single lap you came around that last corner and you'd brush the wall. You never touched it with the car, but you only hit it with your mirror.
It cost me
every
a fortune.
single lap I watched. Yeah, it would knock the mirror in, and you go past me as I was watching, and then your hand will come out the window to push the mirror back straight again. Every single lap you did that, and never put a scratch on the car.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I guess we were a good run.
That was.
But anyway, I have to raise my hat to you and say it in front of your son, everyone. When I met you, I remember you were still paying your Formula Ford on a credit card. You actually sold the spare tires from your car to put gas in your car to get to the racetrack. You were working at my school for a few $100 here and there, and look where you are today. Part owner of Motorsport. You made a tremendous career in racing in the States and in Europe. I'm saying that, and I'm almost having tears because I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Ricky. Thank you.
And I told you before. Seriously.
Thanks, Ricky. Well, I don't. I see, for me, the turning point for me, and that's all I want to do is race. But meeting you at the auto show in 1985 was how things turned around. Because I was broke. I wasn't. I hadn't raced in 4 years.
And I believe it was in Ottawa, wasn't it? It was not
Oh,
Toronto.
maybe it was. I
think
was
it was.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, I thought, oh, here's, the opportunity. You had these brand new Reynard Formula 2000 cars, all the same. You were doing this single day, or it ended up being 2 days. I think the scholarship where you could win a whole season, and the lapping days were affordable. And at the time you're running slicks. I think they were Avon slicks. And I just thought, well, there's an opportunity here. And I was terribly disappointed to not win the scholarship, but
I don't remember these details, but something I remember though. You showed up at the race for the race weekend to enter the weekend, and you took me aside. You said, "I don't have the money right now to pay." I said, "Well, this is not charity we're doing here. It's a racing school. It's a business. So." So I said, Ron, this is a real business. You're supposed to have money when you show up here. But then you came in the office with your girlfriend back then. I don't remember her name. Beautiful. I guess I can trust him. Being with such a girl, he cannot be, dishonest or something like that. And literally, that's why I said, okay, I'll give you a chance. You race this weekend, you pay me later, but I've never done that with anybody else.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yes, I remember. I do remember doing a few of the school races in 85, and that scholarship. That scholarship thing, I was banking on that, because I did the lapping day, and then I think you had like 70 or 80 guys sign up for that to win a whole season. It was worth about 15 grand back then, and I got down to and I made the finals, because there was only it came down to like a half a dozen guys. There was myself, Christian Vandal, Claude Bourbonnais, Stefan Prout, and Joe Herbert, and myself, something like that. It was, and I was
good talent there.
Yeah, and I was, and we'd been on slicks, and I remember you coming to me and saying, "You're doing really well," so it came down to that final. I'm pretty sure it was over 2 days, because you had so many entries.
Yeah.
But
we used to call this the runoffs.
Yeah, it was a runoff where one guy was going to get the full school, and I remember you were having trouble trying to figure out how to select who that might be. So we ended up with about a half a dozen guys in the end. And we all had to drive. You put the car on street tires.
Yeah.
And then we did basically drawing from we're going to do how to do a draw. Who goes first? Me being the cocky one, I said, I'll go first. And which was not the smart move, because I'd never driven. The other guys had been at Jim Russell. And had driven the cars on street. I'd never driven one of these things on a street. And I remember coming around, going into one, thinking, oh God, this thing's moving all over the place. And into two at Shannonville, there was nowhere. I had no idea that the grip would be that bad from the slick to a street tire.
Yeah.
But
good memories.
It's okay. Joe Herger won the scholarship.
Oh, you did, huh?
I remember this. He did.
It was not Vandal?
Nope. No, it was Joe Herger.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I think Vandal got it the next year because he won the school championship. Yeah, because I did about three.
Christian Vandal, he came here last year.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. He's doing windsurfing. He's doing a lot of windsurfing now, and So we got together.
I'm crushed. You never invited me. I'm not going to do any windsurfing, but
Yeah, you certainly invited.
I look forward
But
to it.
I think you're more busy than that right now.
Let me
that's true.
let me interject and just say, so my dad has told me a million stories over the years, and I always love hearing them. Obviously, I've always been interested in racing. Obviously, I was born at the racetrack and all this, but Richard, you were always in all the stories, and the way my dad always talked about you, it was like, who is this Richard guy? I need to meet this guy sometime. So it was like an honor to have you help me out at Tremblant and meet you. And I remember I was at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in 2014, and I heard that you were racing Meeker Cup, and I made my friends. We were in the stands. I was like, I'm not leaving the stands until we watch this Meeker Cup race because I have to see Spénard race. And they were not happy with me because it was like, they put at the end of the day, like the last session, and it's hot and they're all tired.
At age 62, after not racing for 12 or 13 years, I think, I raced Micro Cup. I had a blast doing it.
Yeah, well, you made some. I was at the 7-8 chicane or whatever, and you made some awesome passes. So it was worth it to stay and watch. But my dad always talks about the 89 season because that's when he finally beat you after all the years of trying. And I've seen footage of that 89 race at Mosport, that finale. And that seemed like the craziest race. There was like 3 red flags. Do you remember that race at all?
Which one? The one at Mosport?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The one
that was the
yes. The one
that was the other turn 3.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, that was crazy. I almost killed a corner worker. But yeah, I didn't have to do very much to win the championship, but not finishing the race, I was handing the championship to Ron.
So what happened? There was like a crash in turn 3 or something like that?
Well, what happened is on the first lap, there was a crash. Car parked. They end up parking the car like on the side, outside of corner 3 toward the exit. And we're doing basically a lap behind the pace car. Something happened where we expect the green, and one corner worker got on the track and he slowed the grid down because there were still cars there. But once you expect to have the green, actually a pace car wasn't there anymore. When you expect to have the green, you want to jump this. Oh no, there was a yellow flag. Oh, that's it. There was a yellow flag in corner 3, and there was a green right after corner 3.
Oh, okay.
So we know there's a green coming up, and we're all like anticipating to pass as soon as we pass the car. But there's a corner worker that slows down the grid, and it creates a accordion effect. And as I'm accelerating to pass people before 4, it slows down before me so fast that I couldn't even avoid the car in front of me. So I just nipped the bumper, and it threw me in the cars already parked outside on the wall. And there's a guy between the 2 cars. He just had the time to jump over the wall. It could have been tragic. But all this because someone decided to slow the pace car and the grid, and we couldn't see that, from behind, because I was like 6th reverse grid or whatever. But it was a bad deal. It could have been a lot worse.
I've also seen a video from, I think it was 1990 at Mosport in Porsche Cup, and you're signaling to my dad, trying to get him to bump draft you. Did you guys do that a lot?
I'm sure we did. especially if Goodyear was in front for some reason. I always Well, that was always a strategy. Try to get to whoever's leading. Let's help each other here.
Yeah.
And then we'll battle it. We'll battle it on the last lap. But in Formula Ford in Mosport, how many times did we? I remember in '75 in Mosport, we used to have some kind of a rack in front of the fiberglass cone to push each other down the back straight, to be able to, we would go from first to fifth on the back straight from the slipstream on in Formula Ford back then.
Yeah.
Or the reverse, fifth to first. So it was quite something.
Well,
good old days. So you ended up with a little bit of a NASCAR trick there, where you actually on the nose cone, you made it actually stronger, so you could push on the guy's gearbox.
Some people were doing that. I think after a while they made it illegal, but it was common in Villeneuve series. Yeah.
Wow.
But regardless of the bumper or not, we would use the fiberglass to push anyway. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I see all these guys. They're still around. John Scratch and David White and Don McKnight. Actually, Don McKnight spent the winter with us in La Ventana. He's also a kite surfer. He lives in Prince Edward Island, just across the pond here. He was one of the guys.
Yeah, we had a bull of a reunion a couple of years ago. Yeah, so we had a bunch of them. Danny Burritt, Scratch,
right.
Brian Stewart. I don't think who else we had? Luke de Sadelier, I think, showed up. There was another Don Sobering. I believe. He came. It was cool for these guys to come out and talk about the old days. And it's still 40. This was 40 some years later. There was a couple of them that still didn't get along. I remember in turn 3. 1970.
It's crazy.
It was hilarious.
We have trouble to remember things a month ago. But racing incident, I can describe the race incident like it was the last week. It's strange. I guess perhaps the focus we had makes it easier to remember. I don't know, but it's kind of strange.
Do you have a specific race or a specific moment that you feel like was like the best, maybe like the best battle you ever had, or the best race that you ever drove at Mosport specifically?
Well, I was kind of surprised the first weekend in '86 when I won the Camaro Series race out of 76 cars. The same weekend I won the Porsche Cup. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, So these are great souvenirs, not being specific about a lap or so. Yeah. But I had some great battle with Goodyear, Case Near up, Ronnie, your brother, Ron, Kenny Wilden. Great souvenir also with teammates, with Ron being my teammates for a couple of years, David Imprignam being my teammates. Great souvenir with David. Maybe a souvenir where in Porsche Cup, usually Porsche were very, very reliable, and as well as the Camaros. But I remember in one race weekend, I'm going to qualify, and the car stopped on the back straight for some reason. I didn't have a lap in for qualifying. So I jump out of the car. I don't know much about anything when I opened the hood, but I figured it just stopped like, dead. So I opened the fuse box, push on the fuse, boom, it starts again. Well, I just have 4 minutes to do a full lap. Boom, I took the pole. I was like,
Oh.
That's awesome.
Because qualifying in Porsche, the tires were only good for like a lap and a half. You had to do it like on your second lap. So so my crew were yelling, what's wrong? And then boom, get a pole. So these are souvenirs.
Yeah. Had to stop on the back street. I'll be right with you.
Yeah. But all the races were good in Motorsport. I don't have bad memories really. Yeah.
That's good.
Love that place. And you did a tremendous job with the Canadian Tire sponsorship and the logos and the building. Oh my God! I mean, that place is first class, unbelievable.
Thank you.
It's really after my racing career, I had to go to the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park several times for coaching and working with Chris By for Audi and utilizing your facilities there with the dining room and all the nice building. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. It's such a very classy place now.
Yes.
Very unique in Canada, right?
Yeah, and that was the goal. You had this iconic, incredible racetrack, and if we could get the facility into the 21st century in terms of our ability to better entertain both for spectators and corporate, we could really take it to another level. And certainly having Canadian Tire to have the faith to, because when Canadian Tire came on in 2012, we hadn't built anything yet, but we showed them what we as a group were going to do. And Carlo Fidani is a guy that, he's a man of his word. When he says, we're going to do it, we will get it done. And a lot of it's interesting the perspective, having grown up there, and then have Carlo come in, who doesn't have any preconceived notions about what it should be or the things you take for granted in terms of the bathrooms, the fact that there was this little mouse tube of a tunnel to get into the infield, and then for him to be able to sort of stand up on the hill and say, we got to do this, and this. We need to create more of a connection between the outfield to the infield. That's when the bridges came into play at turn 2 and the Canadian Tire Bridge at the entrance to 8. Just really, really interesting to be part of his ability to look at the facility, knowing what we needed to do, and being able to visualize, the new entranceway. We've got to get a better tunnel. We've got to get access in and out much easier. Bridges, the hills, moving a lot of dirt to create better camping areas, better viewing areas on the hills. It was cool to be part of.
Well, hey,
this has been awesome, Ricky.
Yeah, I appreciate you being so generous with your time, Richard. Thank you so much.
Hey, you're more than welcome. It's always a pleasure to see you. And I don't speak to Ron enough, but I think he knows that I still like him.
Well, thanks, Ricky.
I'm proud of you.
Dinner's on me next time. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
By the way, the last time I saw you was a Camaro GM Players reunion, And it took me 2.5 days to get back here because there was a storm. The plane couldn't land. You guys drove 15 minutes to go back and forth. And it took me, I came back here. I was supposed to be back here Saturday night. I ended up being back here like Monday morning. It was supposed to be a direct flight.
Oh my God.
I spent a day and a half in Gaspé because the plane couldn't land here. It was foggy.
Wow.
So
well, we appreciated you being part of the reunion. That was cool.
All right.
We'll meet.
Say hello to everyone.
We'll meet in Tremblant. We'll meet in Tremblant again for dinner.
Yes, it'd be cool. All right. See ya.
Thank you so much.
Take care, Ricky. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.